negatively, but we'll come back to collaboration. Collaboration is assumed, is given, and from the last I heard, we have representation of the fiscal side, that's the government, on the board, on the MPC of the CBN. So, which means it is not a fenced or walled off affair. It's the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Finance is a member of the MPC, as it were. In fact, you also have some permanent secretaries in government who are also board members of the CBN. So I think there is a collaboration, and it has to be a conscious thing anyway, given the peculiar nature of the Nigerian financial and investment environment. Because, yes, I agree, the MPR, the CBN cannot be responsible alone for inflationary rates, movements. But the CBN has a mandate for stabilizing prices, and prices are manifested in inflationary rates. So if that is the mandate of the CBN, it will be a dilution of the duty of the CBN to look away. So if the MPR movement is the policy, inclusive of other auxiliary policies, just as I noted, you have a suite of policies that the CBN had deployed over the last so many weeks, since January effectively, January 28th effectively, that are now reflecting on the forex price movement in the country. So my own argument is allow CBN to do its own. Motivate, incentivize, if it's to harass the fiscal side, to do its own. And we know that the fiscal side is also doing its own. Just 2 days ago, I started talking about the Renewable Hope Infrastructural Development Fund. So it talks to the fact that there's a commitment to have a specialized fund to provide and facilitate legacy infrastructure. The CBN itself acknowledged what the fiscal side is doing in terms of agriculture, either at the level of dry season agriculture, and most of us saw what they did in Jigawa and other states in the north and all that, and the effort, to boost food production in the country. Yes, it should be a concern because food inflation is as high as 37.8 or thereabout. And it's actually the major driver of the Nigerian inflationary figures. So to that extent, that is in the purview of the fiscal side. And the CBN had also come out to say, unlike before, we are not going to intervene in this thing because we don't have the kind of expertise to deliver on such. So it's the fiscal side that will do it, and we are reading, we are hearing, and we are seeing what the fiscal side is doing. I don't think one should wait for the other. If the MPR will have its own effect as it is being managed, and the fiscal side is also coming up with its own policies and implementation threshold, it will get to a time there will be a balance. But the important thing as of now is that if the MPR is what at the level of the CBN would impact pricing, and of course save purchasing power possibilities, I think I stand by that. Because last year, for instance, about the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, we want to come to that. Manufacturers Association of Nigeria said inventory, the value of inventory was up to 350 billion naira. Goods that were produced and were not sold. And principally, it has a direct tie to the capacity to purchase, effective demand. So if you don't have the money, or the value of what you have is not enough, if you were buying so much before, you would reduce your consumption rate, and that will reflect on your purchases. So what is the need in producing so much if the purchasing power is low? So the truth of the matter is we from March to to December, the CBN had given itself a calendar, you know, of possible accomplishments in the area of inflationary figures, you know. Also addressing the fact of inflation anchor expectation anchor is also important, because it will get to a stage if we allow inflation. For instance, this is 31.7 in February. If it goes to 33, for instance, in March, and goes to 34 in April, the expectation will be that prices will continue to increase. And therefore, you now have sellers of products and services just arbitrarily increase prices. And at that level, you have a pricing crisis. No CBN, no banker, central banker would want to allow such situation. So if this is the minimum it can do in terms of policy deployment to address, of course, and salvage that movement, that is appropriate, you know. The CBN also talked about insecurity. It's not as if the CBN, because when you read the communique, you realize that the CBN acknowledges all these other challenges on the fiscal side. So which means that the CBN was properly informed, you know, on the position it needed to take, given the information and the data available to it.
So which means that there is collaboration between the physical
clearly, everything Prof itemized here are itemized in that communique. So it was not, that decision, the MPR was not arrived at based on any form of misinformation.
They were well aware
or inadequate information.
So they were properly aware of it. And of course, going forward, we can't possibly arrogate ourselves, having the kind of access to data that the CBN has. You know, so for the CBN to take that decision, it must have been based on appropriate analysis of the data before it. Okay. You know, so but my own concern is that I go to markets and I see how prices have been moving, and this should be a concern for households. And when households are starting, you know, agitated around pricing, the concerned authority must come into play. Okay. So if this is the minimum the CBN can do, you know, without, of course, reverting to what we used to have, where the CBN wants to solve every problem. If this is the policy, the tool they can use, please let us allow them to use it.
Okay.